the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand, and baseball in the summer, someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer, baseball in the summer.
Welcome to the Brock v. Mac Legendary Rivals podcast. And, you know, I can honestly say this. This has been one that I've been kind of really looking forward to because Tim and I have not crossed paths in legitimately almost 30 years. And he's still looking great, like he should be on the front of a magazine. And, you know, But please welcome the Brock pitching coach, Mr. Tim Topping. How are you, Tim? How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Feeling good these days, and we'll get into some of your passions, like coaching you've been coaching your grandson, and I understand you're quite a golfer, right? Involved with golfing?
Well, I golf, but I'm not quite a golfer. It's just I'm 16 handicap, and I enjoy the game as most sports I like. You know.
Well, I can throw a ball further than I can hit one, so that'll tell you everything you need to know about my golf game. Yeah. Well, Tim, listen, I think you know, the pitchers from the Brock team, especially those in 95 will know you. But this is a great opportunity for us to kind of, I mean, I don't know how much interaction you had with all the other players and this kind of stuff. So why don't we start with who you are and who you were prior to becoming a coach at Brock, your roots in Niagara and a little bit of those kinds of things that people, I don't even know a lot of this stuff. So it'd be really nice to hear where you came from and, you know, why you still call Niagara home, and a little bit of your life before there was a Brock University baseball team.
Well, I was born and raised in Etobicoke, our Ford hometown. I lived there until I was 23, and I moved to Niagara for work. I was running my own company. I did that for about 10 years, and then you know, I got a big family, and the business didn't go so well. So I had to find other work. And so I got another job in the compressed gas industry, welding supplies. And I was very fortunate. At that point, I had 3 kids with another one come along, so fourth come along. So I had to have a little more stability in my activities. So yeah, and I came down here in the Niagara Peninsula, and I just loved it. I mean, it compared to when I was coming out of in Toronto there. It would take me. I used to live in the West End. I had to drive to the East End for work, and I was never a good riser. So, you know, it'd always be an hour to drive back and forth. I remember I had to start work at 8 o'clock at this company called Goodco Limited, and you know, it was a small company with about 5 guys, and 3 of them were bosses. You know, I was always late. You know, 15, 20 minutes. So after about a year working there, guy says, why don't you just start at 8:30? I said, 8:30, that'd be great. Instead of clocking off at 4:30, get, stay to 5. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. But I came and started coming in at 8:45. So I couldn't change it. I would just push it all the time as far as sleeping. Anyway, so we kind of came to the ends of that. And, I said, well, I got another job. He says, okay, good. Anyways, no, I was fortunate. The new work that I got in the compressed gas industry, it really availed me to, do a lot of my volunteering, scouts to baseball to hockey, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, I just love the Niagara Peninsula. So my wife and I just stayed down here.
That's great. Did you have a love of sports from when you were a kid? Like, were you a hockey and baseball player, or is this something that came later?
I played softball and hockey. I thought, well, I had ideas of grandeur of, I could be a defenseman in hockey. And I went to the Tam O'Shanter. I said, asked my mom and dad, you guys, I want to get better at hockey. And that was the MTHL that I was trying to compete in. I played lacrosse too. Actually, I got playing on to actual travel team on lacrosse, but they had A, B, and C division in lacrosse. And you know what division I got? I got the C division. But that was still a step above house league. Anyways, I went to. I said, maybe you can send me off to hockey school. Well, there's one there called the Tam O'Shanter Hockey School out in Agency. I said, you can go there for a week in the summer. And off I went. And my den masters out there was Pete Mahovlich and D'Amico, the referee.
Jack D'Amico.
Yeah. They were the two. They had our little squad of 10 players. And so I went through that. And at the end, they all gave us the analysis. And we sat down, it came to the end of it there. And Pete sits me down, and D'Amico's looking across the table and said, son, he didn't say anything. Well, Timmy, you're a really hard worker, but you better be looking somewhere else for something else to do. You're way too slow. You're so slow. He said, you'll never make it. And from that point on in my life, I just kind of played. I've always liked playing sports of any sport of any kind. I don't necessarily very professional at it, but I give it all. I always give it my all.
That's I think everyone's roots kind of start with and it's amazing how many people played multiple sports as opposed to today where they try to get you to focus in on one and played multiple sports kind of helped them down the line. So somewhere in there, you must have come across some of the other coaches that you ended up coaching with at Brock, because they were all active in Niagara, whether it was Wayne Briggs-Jude or Darryl Kemp or Mike McRae. Do you remember knowing any of them prior to joining the Brock staff? I think Mike McRae for sure.
Well, Briggs-Jude, I competed against because he was the St. Catharines coach. So I don't know. I think we were just a little off on age groups that we're coaching, but I know along the way, and he's got his name on a ball diamond out there in St. Catharines. So he was a well-known guy. Never mind. Don't worry about it. My lifetime.
It's Ed McMahon. You've won the Publishers Clearing sweepstakes or something.
Anyways, Briggs-Jude. I knew a lot of those coaches, but Mike and LePage, and these guys are much older and higher level of ball, but I was ever at. So, but and like I say, Mike and my relationship started back when I was running clinics indoors. I went to every course. I went to the best ever coaches clinic, and I just to learn everything I possibly do and pass along to any of the coaches. So it was great. It was, when we held the Brock University held those clinics, like look at the kids that used to come out to those things. It was phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
All those Brock clinics. But anyways, yeah. So Mike and we just kind of met up. He saw that I was having some gymnasium time, and he had some wanted to do some private lessons, and then we built a really good relationship. And when I hand over fist, like Mike in my scope of knowledge, he was the top. He was a top dog in baseball, driven, focused, knew what direction he wanted to go in, and he was going to get it. He wanted whatever he wanted. He was going to do, and he was really good at it. I learned more stuff off of Mike, and then and just not on baseball skills. Just on how to run teams and how to motivate players, and the discipline and the push and pull that you can do with a top notch baseball team, and bring the level of caliber, bring the best out of all the players that could. And my respect for Mike was second to none as far as anybody in sports that I know of.
It's amazing to hear, and I think we all have, great memories of Coach McRae and just the level that he brought in professionalism. Do you remember when he had the first conversation? I think how this went down, and my memory is a little shady after 30 years, is Coach McRae recommended that Ted and I speak to you about the pitching coach position at Brock. And I think we had our own conversation outside of Mike. He may have spoken to you before, but I think Ted and I spoke to you, and you got involved with the winter workouts before Coach McRae could, because he was still coaching in the U.S. That's kind of how I remember it, but I could be wrong.
I think Mike and I we were sitting over at some bar and at lunchtime, and he asked me to go have some lunch, and then he just mentioned that he's trying to get this university program going. He was the first one. He was the first one to start it, right? The actual baseball, university baseball in the East Coast. Wasn't it?
No, Ted and I started the program at Brock, and we hired Mike second. So they had started playing baseball a couple years before at Durham College, McGill, McMaster, and I can't remember the fourth school now for the life of me.
So you guys were in it before that.
We were, and we hired different coaches initially. So Wayne Briggs Jude was always there from the beginning. But the first coach was probably a guy you're more familiar with, a guy named Rob Cardis Jr., who was coaching in Welland. He coached the Welland midget team. And then there was an umpire from St. Catharines named Bob Sharp that wanted to coach. The issue was that Ted and I weren't comfortable with their vision with the program a little bit, so we just kept interviewing people, and we needed some coaches initially to help with those indoor workouts. And then we interviewed Mike at the Penn Center, and there was a pub in the bottom of the Penn Center called the London Arms, and Ted immediately turned to me and said, "This is the guy." Even though Mike looks young, just like you do. You both looked really young for your respective ages. So he looked younger than I did at the time. I mean, we were probably only 2 years age difference. But he clearly had a vision, and he clearly had passion, and he saw a lot of things that we both saw and didn't see. So he rounded out what Ted and I wanted to do. So we hired him, and then, those other two coaches mysteriously didn't show up to practice ever again. And I do remember you coming in when we still had an ungodly number of people trying out at the winter workouts at Brock. And we would have to go upstairs and you'd had to assess pitchers up in a ballet studio, but you brought plates so people could at least try to throw over a plate. But to say that there was a wide variety of talent and non-talent there, I don't remember what you were thinking, but probably like, oh my God, what have I gotten into?
Yeah.
But we did have some great mature guys that came out of that. Like most of the pitchers for the first year team came out of those indoor sessions. Chris Ebel and Rob Green and myself and Ted, and you got the project of trying to help Todd Nye turn himself into a pitcher from a catcher, and Alex Harold, the other left-handed guy that made the team, and Brad Tupper. So we were, I mean, I think the thing was, I think you probably noticed this too, was the gap between guys that were good and the ones who weren't was huge. So the ones that weren't good were really horrible. They couldn't hit a catcher if the catcher was 10 feet wide by 10 feet tall. They threw the balls right through the wall of the studio, from what I could recall. Do you remember your early interactions with the pitchers?
What I remember of looking at the players, I'll be honest with you, I probably had to see them 2 or 3 times, at least 2 or 3 times, just to get my own level up to what expectation should be, just to see what the best level would be and what the bottom would have been. So, I'll be honest, I was coming off, I guess, I had a lot of things on my own idea of the mechanics of pitching, which, of course, years prior, Mike also, helped me out with all that kind of stuff. So, but I was just almost flabbergasted. I was so happy with all the pitchers. I just thought, well, they all can do a job, right? So, but for me to actually do the picking out, I think it was, you guys were probably in a much better position than I was to do that. Yeah.
Well, what I remember is we would do the towel drill, which none of us had ever done before. Yeah, and it was, you didn't want to get with someone. I remember always trying to avoid Todd, because Todd was so big and he would kill you with the towel. He'd just whack you and your arm would get red. So I would always try to pick one of the smaller guys and just beat the hell out of them, because I was the same. I was about Todd's size, so I tried to stay out of it. But, I think for Rob Green said on his podcast that, he really liked having some structure to the pitcher's practice, because usually when you play rep ball, you pitch for a little bit, you do a little bit of bullpen session, and you run some foul poles, and then practices, or even indoor practices, consisted of pitchers watching the players do a lot of stuff or shag balls and stuff. But you spent a lot of time with us just trying to get to know us, because it's, for you, it's 10, 14, 15 players at that point who are in these indoor practices and are pretty unique personalities. I remember that you would just spend a lot of time kind of honing in on the guys I think you felt that were going to make the team early, so you could kind of get to know them, which is probably good.
Yeah. Well, Mike didn't want anybody standing around. That's one thing for sure. So.
Yeah,
they got to keep these boys going.
Yeah, we ran a lot of stairs too. That is another thing I remember.
Yeah,
but,
that's right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the indoor sessions, we came out, I think we only kept, I'm going to say 12 pitchers going into the first summer there. And Coach McRae comes on board about halfway through that process. And was it unique having a pitcher as because Mike comes from the pitching side. He's now the head coach and he's also a pitcher. You guys must have really been on the same page about a lot of things, because it would be hard to coach when he's also a pitcher. Most times, as a catcher or an infielder, that tends to be the manager of a team. You guys were pretty well aligned on everything from that perspective.
I think so. I mean, like, he saw a lot of the stuff that I did in clinics and indoors with the younger players up to 15, 16-year-olds, and I think that's the reason why, because the philosophies were about all the same. Like, hard work produces good results, and effort, and to try to make sure players throw without injury. I don't know, we had that one player, remember, we were actually playing in the Hamilton Stadium back, and I can't remember the pitcher's name, but anyways, all of a sudden his shoulder went out, and he was kind of finished for the rest of the season. And that, I would say, that kind of bothered, I can't remember his name, but it really bothered me that, I thought we trained well enough. But,
yeah, I think that was Ron, and Ron was big and lanky, and he had a lot of moving parts in his delivery. So I think he just was a guy that was always high effort. So a lot of strain on a big, tall, kind of a lanky kid. Yeah. And we had Rob Green too, was always battling. He had torn his rotator cuff before Brock, and Rob was a good vet guy that kept everyone else calm and was seen as a bit of a leader, but he was also battling a bit of a sore arm all year. And then the rest of it was mostly, I think you had to be an armchair psychologist just to get through coaching us, for crying out loud. So Tim, you've at this point, in 95, you coach in the summer, and we're heading into the first training camp at Brock. Are all four of your kids born at this point, and you're working a job on top of coaching a summer team and now getting ready to coach a university team? That's a lot on one's plate.
Yeah, I was coaching the travels. I would only coach one of my sons at a time. I wouldn't. They would be the other two. They'd be with another team, different age group. I think only one time where I had the two boys together on the same team. I think it was one of the those elite teams that at the end of the season. But it was everybody had to go somewhere, and I also had a daughter that was soccer and track and field. So so my wife was going all over the place, and when the Brock thing came up, we finished at the end of the season. Labor Day's over. Okay, we're into Brock now. We're back into the fall ball. So it kind of expanded out, and then they would get into the hockey, or not quite as intense as baseball. They were better baseball players than they were hockey players.
I'm sure you sent your wife on the best spa weekend ever after all of that. It's amazing. Do you remember that first training camp we had where, everyone, we had cut down to about 30, but then when we got to the practice park in Thorold, just to kick off this training camp, we're back up to about 45 players again, and it all started again.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, I remember that. I remember those tryouts, and I I saw this, you guys, LePage, all you guys with these sheets of paper, reams of check marks and this stuff, and I'm going, well, this is the way they really pick off these guys, right? And sometimes I was so far off, and you guys, oh no, I see this, and those are things that you guys are teaching me, and what to look for, in these higher levels of baseball, and and the same thing with when Mike and I, yeah, we were really online, and at any given time if you saw something out, he didn't hesitate to tell you, and he told you why, and I've always been a philosopher. If you want someone to do something for you, it is tell them what you want it done and tell them why. But if you don't give them that reason why, it's going to be much harder for you to get that person to do it. But if they understand why you want it, then it's a lot easier. But yeah, Mike and I, when at that, I had no compunction at all. He was the head coach, and that's all there is to it. Like the same thing with Jeff. You have to respect your head coach, and if he wants it done, this is his philosophy and his procedure, then hey, you try to accommodate it as best you can. And it's the same thing as when I'm the head coach on my smaller teams or my midget teams or my mosquito teams, I expect that same. I'm running a show and I'm going to be responsible for that kind of stuff.
Had you met Daryl Kemp before training camp? Is that a guy you had some exposure to in Niagara, or not at all?
Kemp and like Peter and all those guys kind of came off because they're a younger crowd than I was. But through the GMBA, I kind of got kind of touched on them here and there. No, not I'm like John Gill. I'm like John Gill, coach when I was a kid. Like all these guys, I kind of met them, but I didn't. But once you do, it's Kemp is. You can just think about the trips in my van. Like these guys in my van, it's just like nuts over.
Yeah, I mean,
Kemp's spitting out the tobacco. I don't know, you guys.
Tim, honestly, I can remember one thing from training camp was I was a little dinged up from summer ball. I played summer ball in Niagara, and so I played on this weird team in Niagara Falls with Daryl Kemp, which was kind of funny to be a teammate, and then now he's coaching.
Oh, yeah.
But I had been on 2 or 3 teams in Buffalo, and so they pitched the living snot out of me because it's a left-handed guy and he throws the ball pretty hard. Let's use him all the time. Coach McRae finally got pissed off and said no more. But I was sporting a bit of a sore groin at the start of camp, so I was a little slow off the hop. Not that it mattered. You had already seen my act, so I remember your nickname for me was, everyone called me Polecat forever, but you just called me the Bull because there were days where you'd be like, I'm just not getting in your way today, because I was probably snorting fire or getting ready to, throw the ball through the catcher. I had those kinds of moments at Brock, and but Kemp and I were walking in from the bullpen, and because he had been hitting, and I know I was probably out doing something with you, but I was walking back to the dugout, and we had this horrific guy that came to camp who couldn't catch anything and was just a disgrace. And he would run around in the outfield when they hit a fly ball to him. He wouldn't stand still like normal people would, and then he would jump up in the air and do a pirouette and fall down, and the ball would land. And I walked in with Daryl, and he said to me, Mike, who invited the ballerina to play left field? Whoever that is should be fired. I said, it wasn't me, Daryl, honest to God, I swear. And but he just had a great sense of humor, so I'm sure he had you guys laughing all the time, which was...
Yeah. The way Kemp put other players in the line, they get along too. I just laugh. You had him and Ronnie Zimmerman at the same in the band together. That was chaos.
So you get blessed though with a position group that every other, the infielders and the outfielders were all freshmen. Basically, there was Colin and a couple of other guys that were in their second or third year, but mostly they're all first year kids. And the pitcher group though was mostly people who were older and more experienced. And maybe with the exception of Joel Garten. Joel was a freshman who was pretty young comparative to the rest of us. Was it easy to work with a group that had been around the block a few times? And what do you remember about the initial conversations with the pitchers at summer camp, at training camp?
I don't, to recall, I never felt at any given time. I always felt that I was never disrespected. All you guys, I asked you to do something. I guess it's the way I was doing it. Things like you guys always did the stuff that I asked to be done. Was it beneficial? I think so. I mean, like it came to the championship game that first year, so must all those things must have. And but no, I really liked it. I like the personality of the players. I like the personality of our bullpen, and I think we came out and did an outstanding job at from the beginning to the end. I think it would be different if there was a little bit of I'm not going to do that, or I don't see it. But like I said, I think I explained what I wanted and why I wanted it, and you guys just came up and did a fantastic job. Put it in your heart and soul on it.
I don't think effort was ever an issue. I think occasionally there would be mechanical adjustments, but the thing I remember the most, because, I think just speaking personally as a pitcher, I had come from a guy that pitched against Mickey Mantle and Willie McCovey was my first pitching. He was my first pitching coach. And he taught me how to be hard as nails. So I was already a load to deal with from a personality standpoint because I just was mean. I loved being mean on a baseball mound. So, but I needed a pitching coach who would come out and make me feel at ease because I kind of knew what I was doing. And, I just needed someone that was going to, especially with the dynamic with Coach McRae, who was demanding on pitchers because he was one. I needed a pitching coach that was going to just come down and kind of be my a little bit of an island in the storm at that point. And I think by and large, I've talked to Ted and I've talked to Todd and I've talked to Rob about it and Joel. I think Evil will be similar. What we really appreciated about you, Tim, was you kind of were like a super cool cat. He reminded me of Tom Berenger. You kind of looked like him at the time. But I always thought, Tim's like a surfer, kind of like a Zen master. He just comes out and makes you feel like you can just step outside of the situation you're in and kind of look at it in a good way. And I really enjoyed our interactions because I had a great, really good year. And, I needed that given that I was emotionally pitching for my brother had died the year before. So I had all this, I was emotional and I say this to everybody, I probably should have went undefeated that year, except that Coach McRae pitched me in a game against U of T where I people don't know this, but when my brother was in the hospital in a coma for 4 months at Sunnybrook, I had a girlfriend at the time who was a nurse. And she was amazing. She came to the hospital with me every day that she could. and for months and months and months helped look after my brother. And at the time, there was huge cuts in the healthcare system, so no one could get a job nursing. And my ex-girlfriend had graduated from Durham College that September and was moving to Mississippi to take a job nursing, which was a big emotional journey for me, obviously. And Coach McRae started me on the exact day that she was leaving to go to the airport and leave to go. And she was in the ballpark for the first 3 or 4 innings, and we were up 2-1. And I was in a real rush to get off the mound so I could at least say goodbye. And I just turned my head, and she had to walk out of the stadium because she had to go for a flight. And I looked up, and she was gone. And I made a mistake to a guy named James Lee, and U of T ended up tying the game. And I remember that you came out to talk to me, and I was almost crying because I was like so raw. I was such a raw nerve at that point. But I'm pretty sure that I could have kept my focus if I hadn't been pitching on that day. But little things like that were stuff that nobody knows. But you were like having your security blanket for me and others. My battle was never with the batter in the batter's box. It was always with things from the outside. And for someone like Rob Green, it was with himself, more about his physicality. With Chris Ebel, it was sometimes just getting him into a zone that allowed him to be a little beyond just being composed. And, so I think that was your real superpower, was that you were able to reach people that are, could have been harder for someone else that was real. I think you just absorbed a lot from a lot of us. And I think that's a great quality. Is it something that just is naturally part of your personality, or are you the person that tends to be a great listener, or is this something you learned as a coach?
Well, a good salesman's a good listener, right? That's wasn't a good joke, but anyways, I think it was probably every once in a while I'd show up with a shirt and tie on, right? And you guys, what's the guy doing on a ball diamond with a shirt and tie on? And Chris Ebel, not Chris, but what a guy! When I remember him, quite a way through the season, you know how you go in and you'll warm up to start the game, and 20 pitches, you should get the ball no more than 25. Well, we started off Ebel with 50, and then he still wasn't warmed up yet. You still need another 50 to get the first 50 pitches. He was still having trouble with the strike zone.
Oh, Jesus.
So McRae says, make sure he gets 100 in the bullpen before he comes up.
Oh, man.
And then he'd come out and he'd just be hauling the ball there.
How early do you got to start to throw that, between 50 and 100 warm-up pitches? He must have had to start throwing 45 minutes before the game.
Yeah, crazy.
Sometimes it was bloody well cold out there. I mean, the McMaster game was so cold. I wouldn't have wanted to have been out there 5 minutes, never mind 50 of them.
I need days like today. That's where we went. Like 1st of March, it's 22 degrees.
Yeah. So do you remember traveling to the U.S. with the team in some of those weird trips, Cooperstown and St. Bonaventure?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, where was that place? Was that outside of Utica where that guy, there was a farmer out there, and the guy had built his own ball diamond?
That's just outside of.
I thought it was outside of Utica. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't remember the guy's name, though. Whoever owned it had his own satellites up there. But it was in that big vista. And the background was just the mountains up there to see. And he had his picnic tables, all that kind of stuff out there.
Yeah, we took some really interesting trips, and we obviously did really well against the Canadian teams, the American teams. We also did pretty well against, but sometimes the umpiring was a little suspect. I remember you must have had a hard time keeping some of our tempers in check because if we would get out to a lead, the strike zone would shrink down to the size of a dime, and
that's what happened. That's happened when you go play American ball. The Canadian team didn't play an American ball. Didn't McRae got the boot on St. Bonaventure where he got the boot?
Yeah.
He might have got fed up with the strike zone or something. Oh no, somebody got beaned. Wasn't it somebody got beaned?
Yeah, I think the beaning. Like my memory of this is so different than everybody else's. I don't know what. I must have been on some great hallucinogens or something. But what I remember is we went up really big in the first inning. We were up 5-0, I think.
Yeah.
And then I remember that I thought their original home plate umpire came up with either chest pains or he felt sick. And then they replaced him with a guy in a St. Bonaventure alumni jacket. That I remember. I'm pretty sure I'm right on that part.
Yeah.
But what I don't remember next is I thought that they just the strike zone shrunk down to nothing for our guys, and it pissed Mike off to the point where he got tossed. But somewhere in Jeff Lounsbury's version of this, Steve Vatour, who was a closer that we had that threw pretty hard and had a wicked slider, we brought Steve into the game, and at some point Steve lost it and hit a guy that slid through on our second baseman, Larry Houston. He slid through and went in spikes high, so Steve hit him in the chest. And then they tossed Steve, and then that caused Mike to freak out. And I don't remember which, truthfully. I think it was probably a combination of both those things. I definitely remember that all of a sudden our guys were not able to throw strikes. And it wasn't the usual suspects. We had a couple of guys on the team who battled control, but it wasn't those pitchers. So I said, thank God I wasn't pitching because I would have been the umpire. Like I would have gotten that pissed off.
Yeah.
But and I think you had some real projects to work with. I mean, that must have been interesting from a pitching coach perspective. In that you had Todd Nye, who was a great kid from an attitude standpoint, a big, tall guy who had never really pitched before, maybe 5 innings in his entire life up until that point. And you had Ron Strow, who was a big, tall guy, but lots of moving parts and had a hard time, I think, initially focusing in on hitting the glove a lot. So and then you had Joel Garden, who's another tall one like that, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember kind of what it was like working with the guys that needed more work? Because I think that the top end guys were small adjustments, but you got a lot out of some guys that hadn't pitched a lot before or needed a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like they all progressed. I mean, like to a point that if you can get out there and you can start throwing strikes, with your four-seam, two-seams, and and before you get into your curve balls or your sliders, that rotation on the ball. And that's what it worked with on first, and then they just kind of came along a little better. But your expectations are never. How can you say? You got to go through the first steps, right, before you can get to the last step. So, I'm doing these 10-year-olds this year, back to the 10-year-old. And anyways, we're over at the bullet camp, and the guy comes up to me and says, "Man, hey, this is the first year the kids are pitching." I said, "Man, your kids are just they're just like too mechanical. They're not flowing." I said, "Of course not. They have to learn one step before the next step to the next step. So they have to progress that way." And he says, "Well, they'll never pitch." And I said, "Yes, they will." Yes, they will. They'll eventually get there if you work at it. They'll eventually get there. But, some people get a little faster, a little quicker, and yeah.
I remember.
And like I said, like and the players that could pitch, like what can you tell them? And like it's like, what do you tell a hitter that can hit? You don't change anything. You don't even try to tweak anything. If he's hitting bombs and like 10-ish, and they're like, how much you gonna tell 10-ish to hit? So,
yeah,
you just let them go, right? So.
Yeah, I do remember that we looked like a Tai Chi class at some points. We would do these full arc extensions and have to balance on one foot. It's like the Karate Kid out there. And I had never done any of that stuff, so that was all. It certainly did for me. I mean, I always had, I think it's really fascinating because I spoke at length about what I was coming out of Oshawa. So out of Oshawa, I had a great fastball and a mediocre curveball. Let's put it that way. It wasn't great. And I never, ever managed a changeup in my career. I think I said to Rob Green, I think I threw 15 changeups in my entire life, and 2 of them are still rotating the earth. They got hit that hard. So I remember throwing one when I was in senior ball where it was in the inter-county, and I threw one, and in the minute I threw it, I let out an F-bomb because I knew it was going to get hit out of the park 2 inches out of my hand. So I abandoned the changeup, but the one thing I did learn at Brock, because of all the repetition and of all with the tennis cans and the towel drills, and more so the balance drill, was to get a good curve, like a better curveball. So my curveball got way better at Brock, and it made me go from a guy that got a lot of ground ball outs, which I would get because my fastball moved so much, to a guy that could strike people out a lot more. And I could always throw fastballs by guys, but to have a second pitch was really big for me. And then I could just change speeds on my fastball or put it further back in my hand. And that kind of served as a changeup. But we all picked, I think 4 or 5 of us probably had our best years ever at Brock, given that we had already been coming from some pretty decorated careers at that point. And so that, I think, says a ton. When you look at Rob, Rob Green had maybe one of his best years, and Chris Ebel was great, and Steve Vautour was amazing, and I definitely had, a year to remember for sure. So I think that says a lot about how you guys were able to reach and get better results from repetition and drills, which is very underrated.
Yeah, it is. I'll be honest with you. Fundamentals of mechanics, I think they're just great. But go get them, like all you guys. If you look at all the page and like all the coaches, I'm like, even myself in the lower end, I'm like, one all Ontario, this type of stuff, and we had that strong desire to win. Right, that strong. We had, you had the dedication, the desire, the determination, all the wit. I mean, like to get better, and we all hated it. But I don't think we hated it as much as Mike McRae did when they lost. And we lost, but we never liked losing, right? So, but we all wanted to win.
Yeah, it's. I think the thing that I say, and I've said it now on each podcast, that our championship ring comes from having been the first team and performed at a level that set a standard for a program to win championships. Whether we won a game against Laval or not is really immaterial at this point, because that whole group of people were winners for surviving the season and setting, really high standards for everything that came after. And most of us have gone on to win our championships in life in some form or fashion. And, that's, I think, the best part about getting everyone back together after 30 years is you see how far people have been able to take those concepts of hard work and being a good teammate with them. What do you remember about the national championships? It was referendum weekend. We all drove to Montreal in that crazy political environment, and it was colder than hell. And
it was cold. That was cold.
Yeah. And the funny part is, people don't know this now, but it was us and U of T from Ontario. It was Laval and McGill from Quebec. And it was Dalhousie and St. FX from the East Coast. Those were the teams that played. And out of that, in the first 4 years, were 4 national champions. McGill were the champion the year before. Dalhousie won the year after. Laval won the year therewith. And 2 years after that, Brock wins. So, there's obviously some DNA and some amazing players that are playing in these programs and some standards that are of national level. Do you remember much about the environment surrounding the games, because it was the referendum weekend? I remember that huge Canadian flag that was in downtown Montreal that they unfurled, and just the number of people was crazy.
I remember the cold. I remember the little hotel room or motel room that we had. Packing all you guys in the, which had 6 guys per room or something like that. I can't remember. I just kind of laughed at, but I never felt worried or unsafe where we went. Of course, I couldn't speak French, but it never bothered me to the politics of it in that area. Like, we're in Canada, so it's not as volatile as you would say in the Middle East or something like that. Where, a political uprising would put people in danger type.
It was a distinctly Canadian attempt to separate. It was all done very politely, and
they were trying to make deals with New York and change on their money and stuff.
Well, it's I think, I don't know whether you remember this. We brought it up in Rob Green's podcast when Rob got hit with that line drive against Dalhousie. It was the hardest line drive I ever saw in my life. I'd never seen a pitcher hit that hard in my life. And it was such a Rob Green play to get knocked down by a ball, because I think it nearly caved his chest cavity in. And he collapsed, and then he got up and he threw it to first, and then he collapsed again. And I thought, only Rob is capable of that kind of stuff. The rest of us would have just waited for the ambulance. Do you have any memory or recollection of that play, or you just?
No, I don't. I don't. I mean, all I remember is trying to stay warm and keeping our pitchers warm. Getting ready and to make sure to get them up to the next. You need another pitcher. Well, we'll get them up and keep them warm. That type of stuff.
I think most of us closed our eyes as soon as we saw the ball hit Rob, to be truthful. I tried to pull it. He said that he had 2, the ends of his ribs were dislocated or some such thing. Years later. Yeah, it hit him that hard.
Wow.
So we get to the end of the year, and by and large, we have a super successful year. And lots of great teammates and lots of great crazy memories and stuff, Tim. What happened for you after we got through that first season? What did life bring your way, and how did it affect your coach? 1995. Yeah.
95. On 96, my mother died.
Okay.
And but I was still, I just continued coaching. I continued working, traveling. Just trying to think. I just kind of went on status quo and just waited again until for the next season to come up for Brock. I enjoyed it. I always fully expected to continue on to the next season. I think I might have even gone for my that year. I got my NCCP level 3 coaching. I remember I was at the Dome in the dressing room, the Blue Jay dressing room, where they held the level 3 clinic. And so I for baseball, so I got everything done, but I never finished my my yearly practice plan. So I never completed it. But yeah, I mean, that was a 3-part thing to do. So I was always trying to get a little more knowledgeable on every aspect of an athlete's world, whether whatever sport it is. But I would focus mostly on baseball. So yeah, I think that's what I did the following year.
Yeah, at some point they make the decision to bring Rick Faulkner in as a pitching coach, and did you just at that point get involved with more of the Niagara minor at that time and get back to coaching rep ball and maybe having a more friendly wife to come home to because you're not traveling all over Hell's Half-Acre all the time?
Well, I was now coaching the older kids, and things were going kind of downhill in Niagara District. They weren't able to maintain teams through their own. It's a long story on that. So anyway, so our midget team we had nowhere to play, short of having to go to Cova up in the Burlington. Well, I think we had Hamilton. Hamilton took us up for Ancaster and Dundas. But I lined up to play American Legion. Okay. So I went over to I'd gone over there, played some exhibition games with my teams, and I can't remember the old fellow's name, but they were very receptive to having us in just to play games, just to have competition. They wouldn't necessarily guarantee teams coming over to play us, but we could definitely go over there, but we couldn't participate in the finals. But that gave everybody a real good look-see. You want to show some stuff. American Legion, you could go and play American Legion. So we did that, and then once American Legion came over to Oaks Park, we just had redone the Trillium Fund. We got $35,000, and we got the red clay put on, all that stuff. It looked absolutely gorgeous. And these guys came over to play. So we got to get other teams to come over, and we got more teams to come over. They like our diamond so much.
Yeah, it is one big difference between Canada and the U.S. Other than when you go to the odd university campus where they have a field on campus where it's gorgeous. St. Bonaventure was gorgeous, but I played in Buffalo for a summer and played there several times in Can-Am tournaments afterwards. And the parks were horrible. There were either not lights, or the dugouts were suspect, or there was no fence. They just don't put the same amount of tax dollars behind the things as some of the Canadian parks. And Niagara is blessed with some beautiful parks. Community Park is great, and Oaks, I played there for sure, a lot of games. And Welland had the stadium at that point, some beautiful ballparks for sure.
They've done a great job now with the track this year there. So
yeah,
they put a lot of money into that ballpark.
Yeah, it takes investment from government, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So you know, do you continue with the same job? Are you still working in compressed gas at this point? And
No, I retired 4 years ago. I
okay,
retired at 65, and because that was my breeding, right? I was brought up at 65. You go poof, and you, I couldn't work, and all of a sudden all my skills left me. After,
it's amazing how that happens, eh? I've been trying to make that happen for a while now, but
yeah, but anyways, that to me that's just something that I retired at 65. Actually, 2 weeks before my birthday, December 1st, and I really haven't looked back. I'm just so happy I've got to this point. I've accomplished so much. I mean, Brock is just one of my. I mean, these are things I can't. These are things I'm proud of. I'm so happy that Mike and all of you guys, picked me to come out and enjoy all those years with you guys. It's so much fun. And it was uh, the level, the efficiency, the professionalism. Only thing I wish you guys got was paid parking at Brock. That would have been really nice.
so so Tim, you get to coach have you coach your grandson? Is that correct?
Yeah, he's. We were in house league last year, and we won the house league, and we just, we're all getting a little tired. And my son, he's the guy that runs the team, but he decided, well, we'll start up a select team because got to get players, a lot of teams at the younger age, if you want them to progress and stay in it in the older age. And
Yeah.
that's the problem in our district, is that we're not carrying over the kids to the older ages. So anyway, we got the select team, and the select team did so well. I mean, we played 2 tournaments, and we came in second, into the semifinals. And we got rained out in the second one. But just taking house league kids and just going to play. So this year he applied into the GMBA, Niagara Falls baseball. That we should have an A-B team. So you have an A team and a B team. So the guy on the we don't want to give up our A teams. Yeah, but we want to have we should have a B team. Why not have a B team? Well, you're gonna Anyways, they approved it, and so now we're a B team. So we'll see how we all want to beat the A team.
Is it? I can't see this being an issue for you. But do you find it difficult coaching your own family?
My own family?
Yeah.
No, because once again, I'm not the head coach.
Okay.
I am a grandfather, so I treat my grandson as any other player, and as long as players respect you and they do, give an honest effort, that's all you can ask for. So, no, I don't have any problem with either my son. If he wants to do it one way, then I go, yes, sir. Whatever way you want to do it.
That's great. Any plans moving forward? You want to travel with your wife, or you're just going to be, heavily involved as a grandfather and still invested in your kids' lives, who are probably progressing through into adulthood. Tell me what the next couple of years look like for you, Tim. I think it's great because you look happy and relaxed. So that's always a good starting point for sure.
Yeah, Well, I have a cottage up in on Lake Huron. This April, last November, we kind of gutted out the bathroom and another one of the bedrooms. So, been there for 40 years, so it needs a little TLC type of thing. We've just kind of been doing it over. We put in a new kitchen and stuff like that. So anyway, so we're going to go back up in April and, put a new bathroom in because it's all just kind of ready to go. I really enjoy being up there. I mean, they got marvelous sunsets. I'm, uh, I'm a member at Rockaway Golf Course. I walk the course 3 times a week. I get a little bit on the tipsy side on Wednesdays because that's men's league. We have a couple of bubbles and something to eat. And when I have time, I'd love the cottage. I don't think I'm going to have as much time this year because of the trip, the A ball that we're going to B ball that we're going to be playing. It's 4 or 5 tournaments, but I've kind of picked up a little this year over the winter. I started a little of the pickleball.
Yeah,
I like doing it. I can't find. Actually, I can't see playing. I'm getting these calls. When I play pickup hockey, and I get these calls to guys. Oh, we need a man down. We need a man down. It's Michael. I played 5 games last week. Monday and Friday. Friday I played 2 games, 1 back to back, and I'm absolutely exhausted. Totally done. I'm just going to sit up and watch golf for the rest of the weekend.
Tim, I think your nickname should be the Bull, for crying out loud. That sounds ambitious for me at this point. I played competitively until I was 36, and had tried to retire once in there, and then finally got tired of it because I was 36 and my teammates were 21 and 22, and they were wanting to go to bars and stuff, and I was having to pick up diapers and groceries, So I kind of won an OBAs and pulled the plug and thought, okay, this is now the recreational portion of my athletic life. So I started playing recreational slow pitch. And the first year I started playing recreational co-ed slow pitch, I tore my knee all to hell and have had 3 knee surgeries and multiple trips to the orthopedic surgeon as a result of trying to be recreational. So I'm back to being hardcore now. I still play a little slow pitch, but I play squash and, do a lot of running. So, I guess I never got the foul poles out of me. I just love that part of it. I tell everyone that I was one of when I get McRae on one of these, he and I are going to have this discussion. So I remember he used to make people run that were late for practice. So, and part of his policy was if you can be 5 minutes late, you can be 5 minutes early. So you better be here 5 minutes early or you're late. I know that Chris Peters, Daryl Houston, and I were definitely on time because I damn near got a speeding ticket speeding from St. Catharines to the practice field in Thorold to get there on time. But he insisted that we were late, so we had to run the entire practice. And I just took it as a badge of honor. I was not going to let Mike break us. So every time he would, say, hey, how's it going? We'd say, we want to run more. We want to run more. And so I guess that stuck with me for a while because I used to love the running and love the.
You got any coaching desires?
No, unlike you, Tim, and you'll know this from dealing with me, I might not have the temperament to be a great coach.
No.
So, no. I think I'm really good at being a motivator. Like I run my own company, I have employees and that stuff. And I think I'm a pretty good motivator on a team, but my patience and tolerance level for, and sometimes my competitiveness kind of bubbles over. So I have a kind of a funny story. This is my one attempt to be a pitching coach. my old junior coach in Oshawa said, Mike, I hear you're back for the summer. At that point, I was playing in Thornhill senior ball. We need some help with a couple of pitchers because they would like to go stateside for a scholarship. And I know that you've had all this great coaching at Brock, and maybe you can kind of help them. That's great. So I go down to the bullpen with a catcher, and I said, send me the first one. And the kid comes, and so I ask him the very just what's your name and all that stuff. But then I ask what every pitching coach would ask. I'm like, how many pitches do you throw? He said to me, I throw 6 of them. I said, 6? The catcher only has 5 fingers to put down. That's a lot of pitches. I said, are any of them any good? And he said, well, I don't know. Let's see. So I said, well, that's great. I'm going to go sit behind the catcher here, and let's start with a fastball. See whether you can, like typical stuff you want to see whether they can hit spots with their fastball. So it wasn't very fast. So I would call it a glorified changeup, and he couldn't, it was, if you set up outside, it was drifting over the plate. If you set up inside, it was in the dirt. If you set up high, like he just couldn't direct the fastball. So then I said, okay, let's move on to number 2. I said, what's number 2? He said, well, it's a slider. I said, okay. So he throws the slider, and it's a pretty good spin ball right down the middle. Doesn't move much, but it spins a lot.
Spins like crazy.
So I said, all right, after seeing the spinner for a few there, I said, let's see what number 3 is. He said, it's a curveball. And honest to God, Tim, it was the exact same spinner pitch that I had just seen as the slider. It wasn't any faster. It didn't move anymore. So at that point, I said, I can't do this because, what came next was a 2-seam fastball that looked exactly like the changeup spinner. So it was 6 of the same pitch. He just called them different things. And I said to him, look, let's get 2 of these things down really good, and then we can kind of move on. But he didn't want to hear that. He wanted to hear me to help him with his 6 pitches as opposed to what I had been used to, which was coming out of you and Mike, and even my previous coaches said, the first thing you need to do is know how to throw a fastball, know how to hit your spots, and then maybe try a 2 and a 4-seam version of that fastball. And I was always I just threw nothing but 2-seam fastballs because my ball would run 4 to 6 inches and people couldn't hit it.
You liked it.
Yeah, I liked it too. I think everybody kind of liked that part of me. I think it was the curveball that would tumble in that was kind of the problem there for a while. But then I learned to throw a curveball. And once you guys helped me at Brock get that to be more up and down as opposed to sideways, and it got really quite good as a result of all the repetition. But to me, that was the methodology. Like you were saying earlier, learn to do one thing and then move on to the next. Not bite off too much more than you can chew and be bad at everything. Because what that kid ended up with was 6 mediocre pitches as opposed to building one good thing you could count on. And so, I think that, so to say that I was prickly and maybe not super compassionate to that poor gentleman is what ended my pitching coach career, because the head coach came out and said, Dave, his name was Dave, he seems a little bit hurt and put off that you were maybe a little bit hard on him. I said, I didn't mean to crush his dreams, but that's not going to happen if you let him proceed with that. It's not a winning formula. So the head coach said, Mike, thank you for your time. So I stuck around to watch that game, the game. It was, and that kid made an appearance. He gave up 6 runs and got 1 out. So I think I was probably vindicated afterwards and just said, you know what? My baseball career was meant to be a player, because I'm not. I think I would be definitely be one of those really hard charging, intolerant, kill the guy type of people. And you need more of your personality to do this. Maybe my talent's doing podcasts with people so they can hear all the stuff that goes behind it. Here's a good question for you. So that's 30 years ago. Have you had any run-ins or contact with anyone from the Brock team in that 30 years?
Yeah, I was saying with Mike McRae was coaching head kid for, I don't know, I think from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and he decided to give up the team. I guess he was now changing jobs or coaching positions, and anyways, he couldn't feel he could take the team anymore. But anyway, so this kid that I coached, Jake Peischer and Fisher, they decided they wanted to take on the team, and so they applied for it, and they got the team. And then his father was, I think at the time, on the GMBA board. Anyways, he's a good friend of mine, and we went. I coached his kid, and went along with the GMBA, Bob Peischer, and unfortunately, Bob is a really good friend of mine. I was involved over 22 years with the baseball, and then even longer with him. Anyways, he's just on the weekend. He just had a severe stroke. Doesn't look like he's coming out of it, but he's 58 years old. And anyways, Jake, his dad, Bob, comes out and he says, "Listen, can you give Jake a hand? I'm gonna, help him out." He says, "I do it, but I don't want to be involved with the kids and all that kind of stuff." And over many beers, he convinced me to not take the team, but help his son out with the team. And anyway, so I did, and so I saw Mike at the Ball Diamond on a number of occasions, and but Wayne Briggs Jude, I think he booted me out of a couple of games. Zimmerman, I think I saw his son. I saw his son at the Best Ever Coaches Clinic this winter. I went back to the Best Ever Coaches Clinic to see if I could find out what the latest and greatest was. And I'm telling you, it's a whole new ball game. I mean, like, the coaching is at another level, completely, almost different psych, completely. But I really enjoyed going. I went with my son, and I really enjoyed at it. Who else have I seen? So I saw Zimmerman's kid. I know Ron's still working down at Niagara Motors. No, I can't think of. I would have liked to, Kemp. I might have come across a few times just at Oaks Park, that type of thing. So, yeah.
Well, there'll be at least 23 players, 24 players, 25, somewhere in there that all be looking really looking forward to seeing you. Tim, let me ask you this as a pitching coach. This is interesting because it's the one conversation I've had with Coach McRae is about the theory of pitchers only seeing a lineup twice, or starters going 5 innings and 6, as opposed to back in the day when we would, a starting pitcher like me, I would be personally offended if someone came, like I was just getting warmed up in the 4th or 5th. I felt, anyway, at least in my skewed way of looking at things. The theory of the opener, or people only throwing in short spurts as hard as they can. And like modern pitching is different than the era that you would have coached me in, where starting pitchers were expected to take the ball and keep throwing until they couldn't, Do you think that's healthy for the game, or do you think it's caused a little bit of, because I sometimes struggle with it, because I have pitched with guys who would get stronger as the game would go on, and they'd get in the head of their opponent. If you're beating them repeatedly, they loved it when a new pitcher came in. It didn't matter how hard the guy threw. It was just, I don't have to see that guy anymore because he's been beating our lights out.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
We were always a big believer in pitch count. Um, I believe Mike was the same way, but we wouldn't pitch. You know, you got to a certain pitch count, and we were going to get you out of there no matter what. And I've always been a big believer in the pitch count. I've always done it, and throughout the summer season, I will graduate up to a maximum. You know, with the younger kids up to a maximum 75, and then, but now they don't even allow that. So OPA's, they've come in with some real numbers there. But no, I think a lot of back in when, yeah, we got you prepped for the August. That's where we always work for pitchers was, or our case for Brock, it's for it was kind of a short season, the fall season. You know, you didn't have a lot of time to get all that kind of warmed up. So you guys were coming off the summer ball, and so you were already up to that level of being able to pitch those distances, and that's what you train for. So that's what my way of thinking. Yeah.
I feel I benefited from it, even though I hated it. Truthfully, I mean, pitch count was probably good. I was a much better pitcher during my year at Brock, just in terms of being more polished. But I was definitely an old school mentality guy. I loved throwing inside. I loved having people being uncomfortable. I wanted them to be scared of me. We didn't have all pitchers like that. We had a lot of thinkers too. And, we had Ted and Rob, and Chris Ebel was a cool and composed guy and would think things through. So it'd be a good way to end it, I think. You've coached a lot of pitchers on a lot of teams. What do you think of the differences generally between a left-handed pitcher and a right-handed pitcher? Because lefties are their own strange world, and I love being in it. But that's also probably why I'm not a coach. Could you imagine a left-handed pitching coach? The bloody pitchers would be crazy and probably uncontrollable if that was the case.
Nuts. All the lefties are nuts. We can't go back to the 20s when you can't. Well, speaking about lefties, I was just talking to my granddaughter, and she said, "Did you ever get punished in school?" And my wife says, "Well," she says, "I didn't, but my sister did." And my granddaughter says, "Well, what'd she get punished for? And how did she get punished?" And she says, my wife says, she got wrapped on the knuckles with a ruler. And that's because she was left-handed.
Yep.
So every time she went to write down and be a left-hander, the teacher would come up and wrap her knuckles with a ruler. And my life, so people maybe have that impression, but I think it's all delivery. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, like a delivery off a righty that stands on the left-hand part of the rubber compared to over the right-hand part of the rubber. I mean, you're going to get different angles. I mean, like you can change that delivery just by moving yourself on the rubber. And the lefty is just, for a righty, I think they have the harder time of it, right? So.
Yeah, I think there's a natural movement that's on most. I don't know a lot of left-handed kids. I played with some of the best and it pitched against a lot of them. It's hard to find a left-handed pitcher who throws a straight fastball. And I don't know why it is. I don't know whether it's just some mechanical quirk or just the way they throw the fastball. But I've never seen a left-hander with, a very flat or straight fastball. And, but also personality-wise, they're always a little unhinged and a little crazy.
You're right. Every lefty I know.
Yeah. So Tim, I think, we'll, of course, this means that when everyone sees this, all your old Brock teammates here, we're all going to be planning to come to your cottage with a case of beer, or 36 cases of beer at this point. It's been great seeing you, and I'm super happy that you're doing well and you're still coaching and playing hockey at a pace that would make a 20-year-old envious. I think it says a lot, because out of all the relationships I would have had with the coaches, I always cherish, I played with Daryl, and I loved my interactions with Daryl Kemp. He would say different things to me, I think, because he knew what I was going through with my brother. Coach LePage was a student coach who was very friendly with us and was so he's a different kind of relationship. Coach McRae, I had to be super respectful of, because I was also the founder of the program and wanted to make sure that he had the breathing room and the mandate to run his own ship without there being any appearance of there being a student president or anything like that. It needed to be Mike's thing to do. So I was super deferential to Mike. I never really got in his way or anything, but what I was afraid of was letting him down. So you were like the key guy for me, because I needed someone that could just say, go get him, and let me be me, because, I think I was good enough to, carry the ball, but you need someone to just be a friendly face at that point, because you're hard on yourself. I was harder on myself than anyone else could be. And I think a lot of the pitchers felt that way. So I think they all felt that you were a pitching coach, but that we all respected, but you were also in our corner. And that's a super cool place to be. And I think you'll see that a lot of them are going to come up and thank you for that, because it's been quite common that some of them are like, without Coach Topping, I don't know whether I could have survived Coach McRae.
Thank you very much. I didn't think it was that much of an influence. Thank you very much for that. It's a great compliment, and I appreciate it. I had so much fun. And that's the important thing about the game. It has to be fun too, right?
Yeah.
And when you win, it's a lot more fun.
That's for sure. Thank you, Tim, and have an amazing night. And we'll see you in about 8 months' time, or before, when we show up uninvited at your cottage.